Okay, so it's not too often that you get to interview someone who basically wrote a textbook on the things that you studied, but that's the case for me today. She has a nickname of nutrition royalty, which I thought of as well. I've heard
News
that.
to me. It's news to me.
Heard that before. And her name is Sally Fallon Morell. So Sally is, let me tell you a little bit about her before we dive in here. But Sally's author of a book called Nourishing Traditions, the cookbook that challenges politically correct nutrition and the diet Dictocrats. Love that title. She's the founding president of the Weston A Price Foundation, which has, at last count anyway, 15,000 members and nearly 600 local chapters worldwide. She is president and owner of New Trends Publishing, serving as editor and publisher of many books on diet and health, including other books in the Nourishing Tradition series. And she and her husband purchased a farm in 2009, which is a mixed species pasture-based farm that produces award-winning artisan raw cheese, whey-fed Woodlands Park pastured poultry and pastured eggs. This farm does not use corn, soy, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, hormones, or antibiotics. Sally, there's so much more that I could say, but for now, I just want to say welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to speak to you, and this, I'm sure that we'll talk about a lot of topics, as there's so much that I could ask you, and look forward to learning from you and sharing your knowledge with my audience. So, I feel like in my life, the average person that I run into these days doesn't really know much about nutrition. They're busy with their life, their job, their commute, whatever it is. And it's easy for them to get confused about the latest trends. So,
And what they know or think they know is wrong. So yeah, it's really sad because back in the 40s and even the 50s, Americans had a good diet and they knew that certain things like eggs were healthy, and that butter was healthy, and that meat was healthy, but that's no longer the case. It's just been relentless propaganda against healthy foods.
so true, so true. So I try to educate people in my own life just by, you can't really educate anyone anything. You just have to walk the walk, right? And then
Yes, yes.
people are asking me like, why are you eating that? Or why is that okay for you? Or why isn't that? Why don't you eat this or that? And so I try to share from my own life experience, but how important is it? Like help me kind of sound the alarm here of how important it is to eat real food versus the food-like products that are out there.
Yes, I mean, eventually they will catch up with you, if not in this generation, in the next generation. With every generation on processed food, we get weaker, and it's really sad because it affects the children the most. And absolutely the number one problem with processed food is it's based on industrial seed oils. People say vegetable oils, but they're not made from vegetables, they're made from seeds and processed with horrendous high temperature processing and chemicals, and additives, and these seed oils don't support life. They don't support reproduction. They don't support hormone production. They're bad for your brain. They're bad for your heart. They're just not real food.
Yeah, it's a domino effect. And I think, I remember learning in the NTA program that your liver or your body doesn't
Mhm.
recognize things like canola oil. It thinks it's a toxin.
Yes, well, what you get are these breakdown products because the polyunsaturated types of fats that are in these industrial seed oils, they break down. They're very fragile, and they break down into these little molecules called aldehydes. Think formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is one of the byproducts of eating industrial seed oils. And I don't know if you've heard about undertakers saying that today they don't need as much formaldehyde to preserve bodies.
I have not heard that.
Yes, well, the bodies are already partially pickled because they've been eating the industrial seed oils that break down into formaldehyde.
Isn't that criminal?
You
Wow.
you really want to do this? I mean,
Yeah.
You put
Yeah.
these in your body and put these in the bodies of your children.
Well, that makes me think about experiences I've had not too long ago, actually, where I was out with some friends and we all ate at a restaurant. And the next day I was sick. I was
Yeah,
just,
I understand. Yes.
but the other folks that I was with seemed to just be okay and continue on. Like, is there something to like,
Your body is reacting the way it should react, probably detoxing. And but once you've eaten these things for a long time and you're used to them, I think the body doesn't react the way it should act,
wow.
make you feel sick.
So that's kind of good to know that I'm, when I sort of feel like the odd man out, it's actually that I'm the normal one because I'm
Yeah, I would say.
okay, interesting. So for those listeners that might hear this later, and maybe they're not familiar with the Weston Price Foundation, and you being the founding president, could you share a little bit about, what was it that made you start the Weston A Price Foundation?
Well, I read Dr. Price's book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, in the 1970s, and it was, just one of these books that wakes you up. You never forget what he says and the pictures in there. And I raised my own family on these principles with a rich diet, plenty of butter, cream, eggs. We ate liver. I didn't do everything right because at the time I couldn't get raw milk, but we had raw cheese, and I just cooked for them. And first of all, they didn't need braces. Now, I needed braces. My siblings needed braces, but none of my kids needed braces. And they just grew up to be healthy, intelligent, high functioning people. And that's what we want for our children. We don't want to give our children a legacy of illness and disease and fatigue or mental illness. All of these are tied in with the modern diet.
Right, right. And I often sum it up like this when I meet someone or tell them about Weston Price is that, he was a dentist and he traveled the world in the 30s, I think it was, and
Right.
just wasn't able to find a culture that was, a non-industrialized culture that was truly healthy without animal protein. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, he had hoped to find a traditional society that lived only on plant foods, because this push for vegetarianism was just as strong in his day as it is today. And he said, I never found a culture, any culture, that survived only on plant foods. And in fact, they went to a lot of effort and risk to obtain the animal foods. And all of what we call the sacred foods, the foods they considered important for having healthy children, they were all animal foods.
Hmm.
So that's one of the big lessons we take away from Dr. Price is you need these animal foods.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that makes me think about butter, which you're well known for. I mean, in your book, I pulled it out here, like I have it. I was checking it out again today in preparation for our conversation. And I like the part where you had said, oh boy, where did I write that down? Of course, I won't be able to find it in my messy notes here, but basically eat butter. Don't feel guilty about it. Butter can even help you with things like weight loss. I mean,
Yes.
this is kind of like people don't really know this, even to this day. I mean, maybe some people you could argue are waking up to the idea that butter has nutrients and it's good for you. But, what can you say, probably that you say all the time about how the importance of butter being a health food?
Yeah, well, butter is the healthiest fat on the planet. It is the fat for the growth and development of all mammals. We're mammals. Butter, I can just give you one example. Butter is very important for fertility. And at Harvard, this was about 20 years ago, they did a study where they had women who couldn't get pregnant. And one group of women they put on a low-fat diet, and the other group of women they put on a whole dairy diet, cheese, whole milk. They can't bring themselves to say the word butter, but they got butter. And those were the women who got pregnant. The ones who were on the low-fat diet couldn't get pregnant. Well, this is kind of embarrassing if you're at Harvard University and you've been promoting low fat all these years. So what they said was, Well, if you can't get pregnant, go on whole dairy foods for a while until you get pregnant, and then you can go back to your low-fat diet.
Wow.
This is criminal to say this to women who want to have babies, because don't you think that the diet that can help you get pregnant is the same diet you need to grow a healthy baby? And it absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
So the powers that be, let me just say, have created the impression that you should feel guilty for eating butter. You know, only the elites get to have butter. If you fly first class, you get butter. If you fly, you know, tourist class, you get margarine. And our whole food system is geared towards taking the butterfat out of the milk and putting it in ice cream, because they make 5 times more money on that butterfat in ice cream than they do in the milk. And this is why our precious growing school children, these are growing mammals, they need that butterfat. They only get skim milk. Even our babies, it's just based on skim milk. And what they want is you to go all day on this horrible either low-fat diet or vegetable oil diet. And by 8 o'clock at night, you are so starving for animal fats and the nutrients that they provide that you go to the freezer and take out a quart or a half gallon of ice cream, where the butterfat brings them $25 a pound instead of $5. And you eat it standing up in front of the freezer. You just can't stop yourself. And this is the body and its wisdom saying, one way or another, I'm going to get these fats in you that you need. Of course, if you eat the ice cream, it's with all the sugar and additives and stuff that eventually makes you sick. But that it's our nutrition policy for our children, growing children, is formulated by accountants. It's not formulated by people who love children. It's not formulated by mothers. It's not formulated by nutritionists. It's formulated by accountants.
It's absolutely true, and so important. I mean, think about the beginning of life and the ending of life, and where people ending up in hospitals and they're giving them just like the worst nutrition you could possibly, this toxic food. I mean, to really be vigilant with your health is so critical, and that means you have to dig in and you have to find places like, you know, Weston A Price Foundation that can educate you on the real story with real food. But on that topic of butter, you know, I have a friend of mine a few years back that told me that she grew up on margarine. And of course, this was like when I studied nutrition and like the fire alarm bells were going off in my head. And I tried to say, don't do that anymore. You know, like switch to butter. You got to switch to butter. And I, of course, shared with her some facts that I had learned. I'm not sure she ever really did switch, but, you know, could you tell us a little bit about why margarine is so bad for us?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's made with industrial seed oils. And then it goes through a process called partial hydrogenation, and it makes these solid fats, but they're not the same type of molecule as the molecules in butter. They're not saturated fats, they're trans fats. And these get built into your cell membranes. Body doesn't realize, I guess, and then things don't work. Your receptors don't work, your enzymes don't work, reactions can't occur, you can't make hormones, you know, just things don't work.
Mm-hmm.
So what we say is the liquid polyunsaturated oils cause reactions in the body, uncontrolled reactions that we see, uncontrolled reactions. And the partially hydrogenated fats suppress reactions. So if you're eating a modern processed diet, you're getting both, and you basically end up with chaos on the cellular level. Now, I will say this, we did some testing and they pretty much have gotten the trans fats out of the food supply.
Really?
Yes, unless you're eating margarine. There are a few people who still eat margarine, but mostly people are eating the spreads, the healthy spreads, healthy,
Right.
heart healthy spreads, which are nothing of the sort. They're not heart healthy. And that's what people are mostly eating. And those are the liquid, they're the polyunsaturated oils, but they've added a lot of stabilizers and things to keep them from being runny. And one of those stabilizers is soy protein, which you definitely don't want. The other thing they do, and this I don't want to get too technical, but instead of doing the trans fats, they do a process called interesterification, which intersperses saturated fats with the unsaturated fats. So in the end, they actually are putting more saturated fats back in the diet, but unfortunately, there's none of the vitamins that we expect to get in the animal fats and a lot of chemicals that shouldn't be there.
Interesting. I know that I heard you in one interview talk about, when you're nurturing children, of course, you want them to have like with Weston Price, right? Like the teeth, the healthy teeth, the healthy eyes.
Yeah.
Do you think like could deterioration of eye, health be caused by something like, I mean, that's a hard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For one thing, because you're not getting enough vitamin A or not getting the right kind of vitamin A when you're eating the industrial seed oils. My father, I'm one of 4 kids, and my father used to sit at the table and he would say, I just don't understand it. Your mom and myself, we have perfect teeth and perfect eyesight. How come all 4 of you kids need braces and glasses? And it was a really good question. It stuck in my mind, and I had to answer that question. But it's because my parents grew up on raw milk. It was the era when all kids got cod liver oil. They ate liver once a week, like the doctors told them to, and they got plenty of vitamin A for the development of the eyes, and then all the fat soluble vitamins and the raw milk for having good straight teeth, good healthy teeth. And even though we did eat butter, my mother wouldn't use margarine. And she was a good cook. We ate real food, but some of those key components were no longer in our diets.
Right. Just the evolution of nutrition and how things were, industrialized really once marketing got involved and people could make a lot of money with food products, and then like really went crazy with all of that.
I remember when TV dinners came out. So I'm a little older than you. And I remember we were watching television and these ads for TV dinners. Well, Mom, will you get us TV dinners? So she got some TV dinners. And we had them once. And
they were terrible, I'm sure.
These are disgusting. Why would anyone eat a TV dinner? But, she liked to cook and we had real food. Yeah. But that all that stuff started coming out in the 50s. Right. And the thing about the TV dinners, and they don't call them that anymore, they call them frozen foods or whatever. They would taste terrible if they weren't loaded with MSG. Right. And MSG is not labeled, but MSG is the free glutamic acid that causes kind of an electrical storm in your key glands, mainly the hypothalamus. This is in the scientific literature. The MSG affects the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the gland that makes oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone, the love hormone. And a lot of people feel that the increase in violence that we're seeing today is directly due to the MSG in the food. Wow. But also the hypothalamus is the seat of impulse control. And what are we seeing today? People with no impulse control. They can't stop themselves. They can't control their appetites. Or they're violent, on the streets. But
that's so.
We should be able to control, to get our body to do what we know is the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And if you're eating a diet that's just loaded with MSG, that might be quite hard or impossible.
And I'm sure MSG, we know that as like a lot of people think of that in terms of getting it in fast food or like fast Chinese food or something.
Yeah, but it's in every, yeah.
It's everywhere. And it probably has more than one name nowadays, I would imagine.
Well, it's not labeled. It's usually not labeled. They can put a spice mix in there. And as long as that spice mix is less than 50% MSG, they don't have to label the MSG. So when you see spices, natural spices, natural flavors, artificial flavors, this is all MSG. Wow. And things like hydrolyzed protein, that's basically MSG.
Very important to know and spread the word.
Yeah, all of these things have MSG in them. Even the process of making skim milk creates free glutamic acid, and soy foods are just loaded with it. So this is what you get in processed food and restaurant food. I always know if I've had a meal out and there's been MSG in it, because I wake up with a very dry mouth.
Yes.
So I don't eat there anymore, I guess. But
Yeah.
not everybody has the same warning system, I guess, but it really affects me.
Sounds like me. Yeah, I'm very sensitive to these things. I have my list of restaurants I can eat at, and that's about it. If I stray from that, I know I might be in trouble. Okay, we talked a little about butter, and I definitely know that you provide cheese with your farm.
Yeah, we do cheese and we do raw milk also. We have a license to sell milk as pet milk for dogs
Awesome.
and cats.
So with the cheese, I know there's a difference between like what I'd call modern day cheese and the stuff that you'd find at the grocery store versus like the cheese that you're providing. I want to share with people, what the difference is. There's a big difference between those two. Why is it so different versus, getting something from your farm versus the grocery store cheese?
Yes, I can share that. But first, let me say, if your only choice is a supermarket, you have a budget, cheese is still a good choice. It's relatively clean compared to other foods, and it's got calcium in it, and it's more digestible than pasteurized milk, because you can't make with ultra pasteurized milk, because you can't make cheese with ultra pasteurized milk. So I don't want to put people off and make them feel so concerned or picky about their food that they wouldn't buy cheese in a supermarket. I mean, I have 4 grandsons, and they take their lunch to school, and cheese is the preferred snack, and they get good quality cheese. But I'm just saying,
Yes.
moms who are totally overwhelmed with and challenged to raise healthy children, don't let what I'm saying make you not get cheese in a grocery store. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. So, first of all, our cows are on pasture. They get a little grain when we milk them, but no soy, no corn, no GMOs. But 95% of their diet is green grass from pasture. Secondly, we don't pasteurize, so the milk is raw. A third thing, and a lot of people don't realize this, but we use natural rennet. Rennet is what coagulates the milk. And we use animal rennet. It comes from the forestomach of a calf who's never had anything but mother's milk. And so, yes, you have to kill the calf for this. And traditional cultures who make cheese always eat a lot of veal because they need the rennet.
Ooh.
But I would say 99% of cheese made in the United States, even cheese made by farms that are otherwise okay, 95% is made with vegetarian rennet. And vegetarian rennet is a GMO. It's genetically modified bacteria that produce this rennet.
Mm.
And we've had people tell us they cannot eat cheese made in America.
Yes.
But they can eat cheese made in Europe because they're still using animal rennet in Europe. And they tell us, yours is the only cheese that I can tolerate in the United States.
So lots of times if you have a cheese problem, like for me, like I get stuffy or I get sniffles or my eyes itch after I eat cheese, if it's if I'm not looking at the quality, if I get it at a restaurant, then that might be because it's like you say, how do you spell that? Rennet?
Rennet, RENNET. It could be that. It could be, most cheese does come from confinement animals. One, I think Kerrygold makes a pretty good cheese. It's pasture fed and it's in most grocery stores. But I don't know what kind of rennet they use. They might be using animals. It's good, something to ask.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But even, excuse me, even reputable companies in this country who do raw milk and pasture fed, they're not doing animal rennet. And I don't understand that, because they'd have more customers and it doesn't cost anymore. It's a minor cost to making cheese. So.
Interesting. Wow. Did the cost, that would have been my first guess, but no, it doesn't.
No, it's not.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just a tiny fraction of the cost of making cheese.
I recently saw a video online. I know you can't always trust the stuff you see online, but they were talking about cheese and casomorphines and how it's so addictive. Like, is that true for all? Or what's the story on that?
Well, I don't know. It tastes good. it's good. They talk about that, and then the saturated fats in cheese, they say that's addictive, and that's why people like chocolate, because there's saturated fat in chocolate, but it's addictive because your body needs it. Cheese is one of those foods that you eat until you've had enough and then you stop. I just don't know anyone who's what you might call addicted to cheese. I think the casomorphines might make it hard to digest. And they say this comes from the A1 cows that are in confinement and Holstein cows and so on.
Okay.
My theory is that once you get your cows on grass, they'll all be the right kind, A2.
I see. Well, we've already mentioned a little bit about the move for real milk, and I know you have founded realmilk.com. It's a campaign for real milk. It's to educate and advocate for the ability to access raw, unpasteurized, non-homogenized milk. So I think probably I would guess, most of the people who listen to this don't know much about raw milk. So
yeah, we set this website up in 1998, actually, even before the Weston A Price Foundation. And I was just wanted to make this food available. I wanted people to find out where it was. And there was no online place where you could find the raw milk in your area or what the laws were or anything. So we set this up. At the time, we had about 20 listings for raw milk in the whole country. Most were in California. And today we have over 3,000 listings, and there's many farms that aren't listed. So over 3,000. And so, yeah, and plus a lot of information on the health benefits and the safety of raw milk.
Yes, I know. I mentioned it to someone in conversation, not so long ago, and they were kind of like, "Oh, what? Isn't that scary?" And I'm like, "Not really. I mean, consider what the milk is that you get in the grocery store, which once I heard was the grocery store milk that's ultra pasteurized is like basically full of pus. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but
well, what it is so ultra pasteurization, which almost all milk is ultra pasteurized today. It takes the milk to 284 degrees. And so it's way above the boiling point. You actually can't do that in your kitchen. This is special equipment. And milk proteins are extremely fragile, and they get twisted and misfolded and messed up. And your body says, "What's this? I don't know what this is," and thinks it's a foreign protein and has to mount an immune response. This is why so many people are allergic to milk today. There should be no problem with milk. After all, we all start off with milk when we're born. This is why it gives people indigestion. This is why we have 20 to 30 deaths from anaphylactic shock to ultra pasteurized milk every year. Deaths.
it's because the ultra pasteurized, I want to repeat this for the audience. The ultra pasteurized milk is what's causing the deaths, and it's because it's been boiled and just
well, more than boiled. I mean, boiling is only 212 degrees, and this is 284. And fewer people can drink it, and fewer people are drinking it. The consumption of fluid milk goes down 1 to 3% every year. So it's relentlessly declining. And at the same time, the consumption of raw milk is just skyrocketing. In fact, with all this bird flu scare, which is so obviously just an attempt to get people not to drink raw milk, sales have gone up 65%.
Wow.
Yes. So every person I know who's producing raw milk sells out every weekend. And the other thing is that basically pasteurization has destroyed the dairy farmer in this country, because the dairy farmer, he gets about the same price for his milk that he got in World War II. And of course, his expenses are way up. I mean, there's just nothing sustainable about the economics of conventional milk. And so they're going out of business. By some estimates, it's 8 dairy farms a day in this country go out of business. I think we're down to 150,000 dairy farms left.
And that's like conventional dairy farms, yeah?
Yeah. And whereas, 30 years ago, we had 1.5 million dairy farms. So, and the dairy farm, the prosperous dairy farm was the backbone of rural life. That's what America was, a nation of dairy farms. And they were spread all over the country. All these little towns, rural towns, had a downtown and stores and restaurants and a furniture store and a high school with a marching band and a drill team, and everybody had uniforms. Okay, that they could afford all that because it was a prosperous base for their economy.
Mm.
But then the farmers got squeezed more and more. They have no say in the price they get for their milk. It's basically a Marxist system
Oh,
where they have no control over what they get for the milk.
wow.
So the farmer who does raw milk, I'm not saying that they're all making money, but a lot of them are surviving, and some of them are doing very well. And they get anywhere from $5 to $25 a gallon versus $100.50 a gallon. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so they can make it. And the most profitable and prosperous dairy farm in the world is the raw farm in California, and their income is $30 million a year.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wealthy family. They've got a lot of money that they've been able to put into it. Not a lot of farms can do this, but just,
Wow.
what we need, people of wealth, please put your money in dairy farms because children need this milk.
Amen. I mean, I'm glad you painted that picture. I've lived in Florida many years now, but I'm originally from Iowa.
Mhm.
So I grew up on a farm when I lived on my grandmother's 300-acre farm. She didn't have dairy, but she had, meat, cattle and pigs and
Yeah.
lots of corn and soybeans,
Yeah.
which I know now, not that I know anything about farming really, but that was subsidized. And, I don't know when
Very
farming
subsidized.
got ruined, but I have hope, and I pray that we're turning around, maybe that there's some interest in farming now with younger people. And
Oh, there's a lot of interest, a lot of young people coming back to farming. We just passed a great raw milk bill in Iowa.
oh, good.
Worked for 10 years on that. When we started, 27 states in the United States out of 50 the farmers could supply raw milk in one form or another, either pet milk or retail or farm share, herd share. Now we're up to 47. So we only have 3 states left where we need to legalize raw milk.
Yeah.
And we have 15 states where it's you can buy it in stores. So the goal is to be able to buy it in stores in every state.
That's amazing. Yeah, I hope
Little
so.
by little, little by little. And I really predict that in 20 years, there will be no more processed milk out there. It'll all be raw milk. That's my prediction anyway.
That's amazing. I hope you're right, Sally. I really do. So yeah, that little picture that you painted of the small town, it makes me think of the town that I grew up in. It was exactly that.
Yes.
And now the furniture store, the restaurant, it just
There was a culture in these towns, and you drive across Midwest now and they're ghost towns.
yeah. So
Or I've also seen this, a little communities of trailers where the workers live to work on these huge industrial farms. So they're not owned, farms aren't owned by the farmer.
yeah, it's too sad and infuriating at the same time. So, do you think that, being that you're now, well, you have been for some time a farmer yourself, like what can we do, or what does the average person need to know? Maybe the suburban city dweller, how can we
Well,
participate?
you can support these farms. We have something called the 50% campaign, where we ask everyone to spend half their food budget. It doesn't have to be the whole food budget, but half the food budget, and direct sales from farmers, doing milk, cheese, meat, and artisans doing bread, ferments, things like that. And then we say the other half, you can celebrate how small the world has become and enjoy pineapple and rice, and which is a great thing. I mean, I go into the supermarket, and even though there's a lot I can criticize, when you go to the produce department and look at what's available year round, it's a miracle. And nobody in the world has had that until recently.
Right.
So we'll be grateful for what we have, but we also want to make our food dollars support the small farmer. And this is much easier to do today. Either you can buy directly, go out in the country and buy directly, or there's a lot of groups bringing these foods in to drop-off points. And that's what our local chapters do. You call your nearest local chapter and they'll tell you where the food drop is or where the raw milk farmers is, who's doing deliveries, and so forth.
Amazing. So I recently too thought, because I've been relying on these, let's call them just like the higher end grocery stores for my meat. And I've sort of recently realized I can't do that anymore. I have to level up where I get my meat sourcing. And that means finding a farm.
One of the problems with meat is that it's harder and harder for farmers to find a place to get their meat butchered. Your little town in Iowa had a butcher.
Yes.
And the farmer could take his pigs in November and get them butchered and sell the sausage and all that stuff. He can't do that anymore because the USDA has systematically shut down these small butchers in the interest of efficiency. And what that means is only the great big processors have access to USDA and DA inspected abattoirs because they build them themselves. Mm. So just, our problem here in Maryland, we only have 4 USDA inspected butchers in the whole state. So you have to have a very good relationship with your butcher to make sure that he lets you make an appointment. Wow. Pigs, we have to take our pigs in every 6 weeks, and we have to drive 3 hours to the butcher. And we should have abattoir right here in Southern Maryland, but we don't.
Is there something that going on right now? There's always some bill and it's always mislabeled and you never know what you're, supporting. And like, how does the average person stay up on, promoting the right thing when it comes to food safety?
Yeah, they join the foundation and then we send out action alerts and tell people what's going on. We've worked very hard to get something called the Prime Act, which is an amendment to the agriculture bill. And it has a pretty good chance of passing. And this would allow custom butchers, which are not USDA inspected, but custom butchers to process your meat and cut it into pieces and let you sell by the piece in your state. Mm. And this would really open things up because there's a lot of custom butchers for people who hunt and who, grow their own meat and stuff, but you can't take your meat there and sell it afterwards. Right. Definitely a restraint of trade.
Right. So much to know, but I think that the average consumer can do a lot of good if they take that extra step to get to really care about the quality of their food and make sure they're sourcing it from the right place, not just for convenience.
You want to keep your food dollars in the community as much as possible.
Absolutely. So I have learned a little bit about regenerative agriculture and what that is, but for our audience, could you sort of inform us a little bit about why that's important?
Well, I can just give you the example of our own farm. We bought this land and it had no topsoil. I mean, no topsoil. We have very gravelly soil and it was just gravel and mud, but there was no topsoil, no organic matter in the soil. And so we started doing what is called managed intensive grazing, where we move the cows every day, and then behind them we move the chickens, and then we move our pigs through the woods every day for the cows and the chickens. And this, what happens is you start to get real good growth of grass and growth of topsoil, accumulation of topsoil, and good microbiome in your soil. And now we have about 12 inches of topsoil in just 15 years. So you basically get a lot of fertility. You restore the soil, you restore the land. We don't have to use any fertilizer. It's just cow manure. And this is the key to regenerative agriculture is having animals on the land, moving every day. And this is why we say if it's done right, beef is the most environmentally friendly meat that you can eat. So find the farmers doing this and support them, what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not only is it good for your health, but it's good for the whole environment and the whole system.
Right.
We all work together in this cycle of life.
Yeah,
So
right.
not have to feel guilty about eating meat. So I find
Oh,
that,
no, if it's done right.
yeah, if it's done right.
And chicken too. And we are allowed to butcher our chickens on the farm. And it's so interesting to me. You know, when you buy a chicken in the store, it already smells kind of funny
Yeah.
because they use chlorine and stuff in the. When you buy chicken from people like us, that chicken smells fresh, and you can cook it up and it'll last in the fridge for a week. It won't start to taste sour. I mean, it's really fresh. And then because they're outside and getting green grass and bugs and all that, there'll be a lot of great vitamins A, D, and K. And yes, you should eat the skin. We don't sell chicken pieces. We only sell whole chickens because we feel that this is what people should do. They should cook the whole chicken and save the bones and make broth with the bones.
Absolutely. When you get a quality chicken, you want to make bone broth, use it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I know that your book, Nourishing Traditions, has a lot of amazing recipes in there. One of the recipes, I don't know that I made exactly from your book, but when I was in the nutrition studies, I made sauerkraut. So that was like a way, to use my first recipe of, tradition, I guess.
Yes.
Is there a recipe from your book that you'd be recommending for like beginners, or where to start? What's a good one that's bringing you back to that ancestral tradition?
Well, sauerkraut is a good one to start with because you don't need a culture for sauerkraut. There's a lot of lactic acid in the sauerkraut juice.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, I recommend adding some whey to a lot of the fermented recipes, but you don't need to do that for sauerkraut. And it's real easy. You need a way to slice it. You can do it by hand or food processor. And then you just pound it and get it limp, and you add salt and whatever spices or herbs you want, and stuff it into a quart-size mason jar and leave it on the counter for 2 days, and you have sauerkraut. It's really easy. And what I like to point out is that we've had this huge paradigm shift in the last, well, since I wrote Nourishing Traditions, actually. The old paradigm is bacteria attack the body and make us sick. Okay. The new paradigm is we cannot survive without good bacteria in our gut, and the healthy person has 6 pounds of healthy bacteria in the gut that helps us digest our food, that keeps toxins from being absorbed. It's 85% of our immune system. The bacteria make feel-good chemicals, and anyway, they do a lot of wonderful things. And in traditional cultures, there's no exception to this, all traditional cultures had raw fermented foods that they ate every day. And so they were constantly replenishing the bacteria in their gut. We need to do this. I mean, how many people are suffering from digestive problems today?
So many.
And I've heard amazing stories of people who just all they did was add raw, authentic sauerkraut to their diet, and no more digestive problems. So yeah, it really should be something we all do. You just have a little bit with every meal. And there's more good bacteria in a tablespoon of sauerkraut than there is in a whole bottle of probiotic pills. Yeah.
Yeah. So time to start liking sauerkraut, everybody.
Yeah. And you don't have to make it. A lot of people are making it now. Again, this is why you would contact your local chapter leader, and they'll tell you where it is. In our store, we sell really authentic sauerkraut made by a local Russian woman. So there's plenty of people doing this all over the country. We need to support them.
Absolutely.
And show our appreciation for what they do.
Agreed. One other myth busting idea on food is bacon. What can you tell us about bacon?
Um, bacon, I've discovered some wonderful things about bacon. So I had heard that when you ate pork, it caused undesirable changes in the blood. And for that reason, I didn't include pork in Nourishing Traditions. Um, then we did some studies at the Weston A Price Foundation, and we gave pork to people, and we looked at their blood before and after. And sure enough, if somebody ate a pork chop, their blood would sludge up, and it didn't feel good. Okay, but the really interesting thing was if you marinated the pork chop before you cooked it, if you ate charcuterie like ham and bacon, didn't cause this sludging. So that was a wonderful discovery. And there's a lot of good things in bacon: vitamin D, good fats, all the B vitamins, especially if the pigs are raised properly.
Sure.
Of course, kids love bacon. And I love bacon.
Me
So,
too.
yeah, so you can eat bacon. And isn't that a great thing to learn?
Absolutely, especially all the flavor and just a little bit of bacon can really go a long way.
And keeps you from getting low blood sugar. Great for kids to eat in the morning. They have steady energy all day long in school. Yeah, and they love it. And there's nothing wrong with salt, by the way. You need salt. We need a minimum of 1.5 teaspoons of salt a day to provide our requirements for sodium and chlorine. And yeah, so you don't, that's one of the good things about modern life is we all have access to salt.
Yes.
That's true.
The key being the right kind of salt, right?
Yes, you want unrefined salt, with all the minerals in it. And when they refine the salt, they put aluminum in it. Don't want that.
Don't want that. Excellent. Well, I always like to ask one question towards the end before we close, and that is anything timely, anything to mention of upcoming events, anything new?
Oh, okay. Well, our conference is coming up, Wise Traditions 2024. This is our 24th conference. And they're wonderful conferences. Not only do we have a lot of food for the soul and food for the mind, but we have food for the body. The fee includes 5 meals that are all the foods obtained from farmers and made according to our principles.
Which I can't wait for, by the way. That'll
Are
be
you
my
coming? Are you coming to the conference?
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I come to this. I am so excited. I only just found out about it, really. So I'm really excited to come and eat.
Yeah, well, the early bird is fee price is until August 31st. So you have a little bit of time, but not much.
I'll be getting it.
For your listeners, it's in Orlando from the 25th to the 27th of October.
So excited. Is there, where was it before? Because I heard that it's all over the country.
Yeah, we move every year. Next year, it's going to be in Salt Lake City. Where were we last year? I can't remember.
Who knows, right? Good time to go then. If it's in Orlando, I better make it for sure. I plan to. So I look forward to seeing you there, Sally. And
good.
So much. Appreciate your time so much and your knowledge and everything that you do with the Weston A Price Foundation. If you want to find out more about Sally and all the work she does, please be sure to visit.
Yes, so that's westonaprice.org, and hopefully you'll become a member and receive our journal and support the work we do. The conference is a different website. It's wisetraditions.org and realmilk.com if you're looking for raw milk. And my own website is nourishingtraditions.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that. And for everyone else listening, I'll just say stay healthy so you can stay happy. And I'll see you on the next one.